Well, it is 28 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. Yes, indeed, the sun does struggle to shine on some days, especially after all that has happened yesterday. But it is bright and up in Abuja this morning, even though, we're still trying to make sure that it is shining. Good morning, and Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Welcome to the program. Quite a lot we have for you on the program today, especially given all that transpired yesterday. We had the verdict given in the case of Nnamdi Kanu. Yesterday, he was found convicted and he was sentenced to life imprisonment by Justice James Omotosho. As expected, reactions are currently pouring in on that, and his defense consultants have vowed that they're going to be going to the Court of Appeal, and if they do not get the verdict they desire there, they certainly will be proceeding to the Supreme Court. Now, while that was going on and was televised live on almost all the stations, all the national broadcast stations here in Nigeria, and even online for international audiences, another U.S. congressional hearing was also happening in faraway United States. On the issue of genocide in Nigeria, especially as the U.S. debates whether or not it's going to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern. A lot of it getting heated as well. So we're going to be looking at those two major matters as it concerns us this morning. And the very first one we'll be looking at is this matter of Nnamdi Kanu, especially as it concerns the case on terrorism and, of course, IPOB. So if you missed, because a lot of people, they kept on going in and out of the court sessions. The court was in session for quite a while yesterday, from about past 9 till about 3. They went on recess. They came back and continued, and then sentencing was delivered. A lot of people couldn't follow through to the end. We have a summary of what transpired in this report.
Heavy security presence outside the Federal High Court, Abuja, is indicative of the magnitude of the case at hand. Inside the court, years of legal battle is culminating to the judgment in the trial of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu. The defendant is in the court with his friends and family ahead of the commencement of the proceeding. At the beginning of the hearing, the judge dismissed 3 fresh motions filed by Kanu for lacking merit. Kanu had argued that the court could not proceed with the judgment for the day because he was yet to file his final written address. Things quickly degenerated as Kanu accused the judge of being biased, claiming that he did not know the law.
It's a court of law. I'm under trial. I'm under trial. I have to speak. I'm under trial and I have to speak. Listen to me. Listen to me, please. I'm under trial. I'm under trial.
Please use the microphone.
I'm under trial. And I must please. Wait. No, listen to me. Please. The judge must listen to me. No, wait. Wait. I'm asking a very simple question. No, wait. Please. Look, this is the Supreme Court. Wait, hold on. This Supreme Court here. Hold on a second. I said, hold on. May you please, your lordship, please.
Following the outburst, Justice Omotosho ordered his removal from the courtroom and subsequently suspended the proceeding for a while.
Any judgment, let it be on record. Any judgment given in this court is rubbish. Ask him where is the law. Ask Omotosho, where is the law?
They resumed the hearing after the recess, which lasted less than 5 minutes. The trial judge continued the judgment with Kanu in absentia.
Since 2015, I hold without hesitation.
The judge held that the threats of violence and killings, including the declaration of sit at home in Nigeria's southeast region in the defendant's broadcasts, constituted acts of terrorism. He was subsequently found guilty and convicted on counts 1 and 2.
I called my noble lord M.L. Gabbard, JSC.
He was also found guilty and convicted for belonging to IPOB, which had been proscribed, and its affiliate, the Eastern Security Network.
We are disengaged to act as legal consultants.
Justice Omotosho held that his many broadcasts incited his followers to violence, which resulted in the killing of security personnel and the destruction of properties, including police stations.
The defendant was not on the manifest.
While convicting Kanu on all the 7 counts charges, the judge held that the prosecution had sufficient credible evidence to establish a case against him. He added that the court had no option than to believe the evidence of the prosecution, since the defendant failed to enter his defense but chose to gamble by resting his case on that of the prosecution.
This, in the case of Federal Republic of Nigeria versus Nnamdi.
Before the sentencing, the prosecution counsel asked the court to pass a death sentence on the defendant.
Prescribed for the offenses in counts 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 is death penalty.
However, a member of the House of Representatives pleaded for clemency.
I plead for mercy. I plead for clemency, and I appeal for peace and for stability of not just the Southeast, but as well as Nigeria.
The justice subsequently sentenced him to life imprisonment on counts 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
There are instances where a person commits.
He was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment without an option of fine for counts 3, which relates to the offense of belonging to a proscribed terrorist group.
Restrictions, authorizations.
For count 7, which borders on his unlawful importation of a radio transmitter for the purpose of furthering the activities of Radio Biafra, which was not registered in Nigeria, the judge sentenced him to 5 years imprisonment without an option of fine.
Defining judicial power and authority or jurisdiction on court.
The judge noted that Kanu had been unruly all through the trial and said the law allowed the courts to sentence him to death for the terrorism offences, but being a Christian, he chose to be merciful to the defendant.
By pronouncement, take away.
Justice James Omotosho further ordered that Nnamdi Kanu be kept in a protective custody in any part of the country, but not in Kuje Prison, Abuja, and that the radio transmitter be forfeited to the federal government.
Mr. Malaki Ugumadu joins us now. He's a legal practitioner and also the former president committee for the defense of human rights. Good morning and thank you so much for staying with us this morning, Mr. Ugumadu. I'm sure that you have been following this case and I'm also sure that you were able to watch the live broadcast of the judgment proceedings yesterday. Can you give us your own take on what you saw transpire in court yesterday and whether you're satisfied as to how the judge reached his verdict?
Well, thank you for having me, Malcolm. I managed to watch bits and pieces of the proceedings that were aired live amidst other contending assignments that I had. But by and large, I believe that what happened yesterday was historical. It was not just a legal verdict that came by way of judgment and sentence. It is a historical thought, and if you don't mind, a historical juncture in the history of this country regarding some of the challenges we have had culminating in this particular trial. I say historical because it has a dimension that captures the stage that we find ourselves today as a country and what we have done with that situation. All of the fallouts that are incidental to this judgment left for us to debate and then situate within the context of the same history of our country. Let's look at it from two angles. The one is the legal, pure legal angle, and the other is the political angle. I elect to start with the legal. In my humble view, I sincerely believe that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu unwittingly played into the hands of the prosecution and then left the trial judge with no option other than to come to the verdict that he has just arrived at. And I say this because the thrust of his strategy was to continue to contend that the court lacked the jurisdiction to try him based on a non-existent
Well, we seem to be having technical issues there with Mr. Ogumadu. I'm hoping that he can join us shortly, but he was just making the point as to how he believes that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu played into the hands of the prosecution when he was maintaining that the court did not have jurisdiction to hear his case. But I want to believe that Mr. Ogumadu would also expatiate on what it is that the point that he's trying to make. So far, he said that it's a historical day in terms of how the trial has gone down. You're back with us now. I can see that you're back with us now, and you're just making that point that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu played into the hands of the prosecution when he continued to make the point about jurisdiction. And, you know, we heard Justice James Omotosho warned several times that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should open his defense and, you know, give his own written addresses. And it would seem that he was insistent instead on making a motion. He made 3 motions yesterday, which were dismissed. What is your take on that? Or should I let you complete your thoughts on how you think that he could personally have bungled this matter? Mr. Ogumadu, did you hear me?
Well, I heard you. I heard you. So if you allow me to conclude my thoughts, I think I will go by that since you gave me the option. So I had made the point that he played unwittingly, perhaps because he's really not a lawyer, however intelligent that he came across to some of us. But to continue to insist on that mute point, secondly, to disband his legal team, who I understand are now consultants. I don't quite know what that means in terms of the practical implication of that in a trial situation. The third point is that he seems to completely ignore the point that his no case submission went through the crucibles of trial. And the verdict was that he has a case to answer. So when you do that and then come back in a criminal trial and let no evidence by way of calling witnesses, don't forget, it is still in this same matter that he reeled out a number of high-profile Nigerians who were going to constitute his witnesses. But the greatest of them all, in my view, which was a very strategic, damaging move, was to relieve his team of lawyers, most of whom are about the best in this country. Talking about the former Attorney General, Kanu Agabi, talking about Ikpazu, and a host of other lawyers that he paraded in this matter. Now, the implication was that once you did that, you disarm yourself of the expertise the legal expertise. It's not for nothing that we pride ourselves as being learned. Everyone is educated, can speak English, and communicate in the official language. But in terms of understanding the rudiments and applying the laws to the facts, and in this case, defending such a very high-profile charge, in the sense that it attracts maximum punishment. You needed more than enough experts to navigate this situation. So what he did, in effect, was to rest his case on the case of the prosecution. There were no witnesses, none testified against in his favor and against the prosecution, by which situation the judge would have had the opportunity to evaluate the evidence and weigh it against what the prosecution had presented before him. And you know, the beauty, or if you like, the sensitivity of criminal trial is such that once you raise any degree of doubt, once you raise doubt in the case of the prosecution in relation to the elements of the charges against you, it will be resolved in favor of the defendant, which is Nnamdi Kanu. But none of such situations occurred. On the contrary, he traveled so far in the wood, stayed tenaciously on the meat points that had been attended to by the court, that had been dealt with by the court. Now, even with respect to the point he was making about the amendment of the law under which he was charged, the law is that when you are charged with respect to an offense captured in a criminal legislation, in this case, the Anti-Terrorist Prevention and Prohibition Act, and while that was on this, there was an amendment, the law does not operate retrospectively. So the law under which you were charged was the one that was in existence when the cause of action arose, when the offense was alleged to have been committed. So to continue to travel in that route, well, I believe that part of the challenge was that perhaps, and this is my perception, I think he is so formidably entrenched and fastidious in his own beliefs and convictions that he probably discountenanced what his lawyers were telling him. In fact, at the point where he had to sack and relieve the lawyers of the brief, I knew there was a problem. The only ancillary thought I had was that it appeared to me that Nnamdi Kanu had concluded in his mind that he would be convicted. How prejudicial that was left to him. Now that he was convinced that he was going to go in, perhaps based on the body of evidence that was presented and the fact that his no case submission failed, it was time for him to go completely political about the matter. And what do I mean? These lawyers, please hold on to your legal knowledge and expertise. It is yet another opportunity for me to leverage on this platform, however inappropriate, and discuss my political perception of this country using this case as a case study. And that was largely what he did. His countenance, the professional experts he has gathered, completely ignored the principles of trial as we know it as trained lawyers, ignored the fine edges of prosecution, and then went as though he was more interested in telling the world that this was a political persecution of yet another freedom fighter. And that's what he did to his credit, even if in our view, he went a bit overboard when he became completely rude, not just to the trial judge, but to the country, to the security agencies, to even some of his sympathizers. I thought that given the time he has spent in this matter, having regards to the knowledge he has acquired in terms of practically attending court proceedings, and knowing that he actually, as a matter of fact, stands heavily against the law in terms of the charges against him, he needed to show the world that, look, whereas I might not be an innocent man in the eye of any person who are charged, I have by far more dignity, by far more integrity, and by far more depth in terms of the force of the conviction that I have in what I'm doing, other than just rabble-rousing, rude altercations, unruly behavior, and so on and so forth. What is the last point I'd like to make? It is that as a country, as the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we knew where this whole thing started. And if we have no way by which we can stem the tide of violent behavior, then we may have made a template for the perpetration of violence against the Nigerian state without end. You remember the Niger, by the way, I'm from the Niger Delta, I'm from Delta. So even as ingenious, even as genius and as strategic as the pardon to the Niger Delta militants were, that was the beginning of this whole situation, this whole notion that there's always a political resolution with violent action against the state. And some of us raised those concerns notice. It continued, and you had the Boho, you had the Arewa, you had the and of course the Biafran and the DSN and so on and so forth. So at what point are we going to put an end to the emergence of rebellious dissidents of this country who take up arms against this country, knowing that if you did it so formidably, the government is not just so weak, they are crestfallen and demobilized, such that at the end of the day, it is always about political resolution and other. I'd like to stop.
A very valid question that you have raised. You have raised a plethora of issues, and the reaction of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's defense consultants, it would seem buttress your issue as well, because if you listen to some of what it is that they said, they spoke about the Igbo man, how it is now difficult for someone to be Igbo in Nigeria, etc., etc. And some people will say perhaps that is the dangerous angle, because we do know that this case could have or will have political implications, not just for Southeast, but for the sanctity and for the integrity of Nigeria as a whole. So in your own estimation, given what it is that you have seen and what it is that you have heard, what do you think will be the feelers for pacification, reconciliation, and also deterrence? Because ideally, when cases like this are heard and judgments are reached, it should be that people are deterred from wanting to go down this route if they have a problem with the state. But as you've highlighted, it does appear that that might not be the case. So what do you think will happen in this particular situation?
Well, you have asked me to hazard a guess of what will happen. I do not have the crystal ball to speak specifically to that. But I will try to, put out my anticipations. Some of them are founded even under the law. The first is that Nnamdi Kanu should smell the coffee, bite the bullet as hard as it is, face reality, reassemble his legal team. But I warn that it is usually not easy to begin to apply remedial legal mechanisms when you have fundamentally caused a defect at the trial level that makes it almost impracticable to sustain such a case on appeal. So the first option I think is available to him is to reassemble his legal team. He may reinforce them, he may take out and bring in, but let him have a legal team that can take on this matter on appeal. I heard one of the lawyers, what you call them consultants now, I don't know exactly what that means, clearly indicate soon after the judgment and sentence that they will appeal. If he's speaking the mind of Nnamdi Kanu, I think that is one sure way of advancing, of moving forward in this matter. Now, that you go on appeal does not mean there will not be a political solution at some point. I have, even as a student, when my degree was withheld, we won at the Federal High Court. They appealed to the Court of Appeal. We had received their notice of appeal, but the hitch was too much that they also, their own volition, brought a notice of withdrawal, and we had a closure on the matter somewhat. The point I make is that it's even in their own strategic interest to move from a position of strength, even if the reconciliation will happen. We're not saying it must happen, we're saying it is a possibility because this has a national implication. The whole of the Southeast, as I speak to you, even the country awaited this verdict. In fact, I think on that point, the trial judge should be commended. That is my Lord Honorable Justice James Montosho. So, in the sense that there have been numerous judges, some that recused themselves, others that were accused of bias, some threw in the towel. And it took this distinguished Honorable Justice Montosho to delve into this matter, as complex as it was, as difficult as it became, and as entrenched in terms of interest, and dealt with it one way or the other. What the judgment has said is that beyond the express signposts the position of the country, that here we are, through the criminal justice system, have defined how Nigeria responds to behavior such as this. What is left, which is what you were alluding to, is how does that resonate in this section of the country where this young man claims to come? You know, they have raised a couple of concerns that this is not the only person who has been alleged to have committed this kind of crime. There are multiple names out there in relation.
Oh dear, it does appear that we lost Mr. Ugwumadu just when he was about to make another point with regards to the reactions from the people of the Southeast. And that's something I will certainly focus on in the coming days. But we must switch our attention now to the congressional hearing which happened in the United States yesterday and also has very broad and deep implications for Nigeria. For those of us who missed it, snippets of how it went down yesterday.
Today's sitting of the U.S. Congress Subcommittee on Africa gave an opportunity to discuss the several attacks by the terrorist groups in different communities in Nigeria.
I want to thank our distinguished witnesses for being here today to bring light and scrutiny to this unfolding religious freedom catastrophe and to proffer ways to mitigate and to end the violence and the hate.
The most touching ones are from the Middle Belt, where a Catholic bishop narrates the attacks by terrorist groups.
Thousands more have been displaced, some adopted or subjected with entire villages razed and churches destroyed. My own village of Aondana in Gwe West local government was attacked and several of my relatives killed on May 22nd, 2025. An entire convent of Reverend Sisters of the Clarisha Missionaries was displaced, along with the local Catholic parish. Within the days following that attack, nearby villages like Naka also witnessed attacks. In fact, on the 24th May 2025, one of my priests, Father Solomon Atongu, was shot and left to die in the pool of his blood.
The committee acknowledges that it's not only Christians that are under attack, as even the Muslim community is not spared.
Nigeria is facing multiple different security challenges in various parts of the country, including violent extremist groups in the northeast, criminal banditry in the northwest, and across the country, farmer-herder conflict in the Middle Belt, and other intercommunal violence in central and northern regions. Several factors are driving these conflicts. Yes, ethnicity and religion play a role in some cases, but other dynamics like poor governance, resource competition, climate change, and population pressures are important drivers that need to be addressed.
The lack of response has created an atmosphere of impunity where Christians continue to live in constant threat and fear.
In his testimony to the committee, Jonathan Pratt, former U.S. ambassador to Djibouti, describes the situation as complex, insisting on a more focused approach to the issues.
Terrorists, separatists, bandits, and criminal militias in Nigeria wreak havoc throughout the country, with ongoing attacks often deliberately targeting Christian communities. In addition to the violent Islamic extremism and banditry experienced in Nigeria's Middle Belt, there has been a surge in violent attacks across northern Nigeria by violent extremist organizations like ISIS West Africa, ISIS Sahel, Boko Haram, Jainim, and Al-Qaeda affiliate Ansaru, and Lakurawa. The ongoing violence is a problem of prioritization for the government of Nigeria. Although its military and police are engaged and taking significant losses in their counterterrorism efforts in the Northeast, the Nigerian government has not done enough to effectively combat violence in the Middle Belt.
This is certainly not a good time for Nigeria, but some of the members of Congress say they are optimistic on the way forward for the country.
Aid is important, and this should be for the victims of Fulani herder militia attacks, and this should be distributed through trusted local providers, including through the churches on the ground that are currently one of the main aid providers to the survivors of these attacks. And it's just, again, tragic and ironic that productive farmers now need food aid since they have been driven from their Middle Belt farms. 4, sanctions against those aiding, abetting, and granting impunity to the Fulani herder militias, including those sanctions should include high-level officials in the criminal justice system and the military. The U.S. should gather intelligence regarding official responses to the Fulani herder militias and review possible visa and Magnitsky sanctions for those aiding and abetting. The Fulani warlords' names are known or knowable. Out of all the, I think it's important to understand that out of all the violent attacks by Fulani herder militias, there have been only a few arrests.
I expect, as we're cooperating with the government of Nigeria on what those tools will be, if there is specific U.S. government programs or assistance that will require a waiver, and through agreement in our cooperative relationship with the government of Nigeria on what will be effective and successful, that we may need to seek waivers for some programs.
Strengthening the military and reforming the institutional weaknesses in Nigeria will indeed serve as a guarantee to the U.S. Congress and the government that Nigeria is serious about tackling the issue of insecurity, albeit Nigeria needs help.
Well, Mr. Laulu Akonde joins us now. He is the former presidential aide and also presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources. Mr. Akonde, it's good to see you. Were you attending the congressional hearing in person yesterday?
Yes, good morning. Yes, I was at the congressional hearing yesterday in Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Indeed. So I'm sure, I mean, for a number of people who were able to follow that, it seemed that it was a rather nuanced, a more nuanced hearing than had been expected. because it would seem that those who had been pushing for this designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, yes, they were pretty vehement, but then it would seem that we also heard from other people who, you know, have a more balanced and a more nuanced understanding of Nigeria. What was your impression of how that hearing went down yesterday? Were you satisfied?
Well, you recall that quite a few members of the U.S. Congress, especially Congressman Chris Smith, who happens to be the chairperson of the Africa Subcommittee of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee, and Senator Ted Cruz in particular, those two of them came up with the idea of a bill to cause the designation of Nigeria by the President and Secretary of State in the U.S. as a country of particular concern. But before that bill could actually come to the floor of the House, U.S. President Donald Trump himself took that decision a few weeks ago and said that, look, I am designating Nigeria right away as a country of particular concern. And so you are right that once that happened, we had a lot of flurry of activities and narratives and the voices of those who believe that that is what ought to happen. And the president did it. But indeed, there were also other members of the U.S. Congress, as we saw yesterday at the hearing, who had a more nuanced approach to this thing, who demonstrated a bit more understanding of the complexity of the Nigerian condition. But one thing that no one could deny, and from both sides of the aisle in the U.S. Congress, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, one thing everybody agreed to was that, yes, there were killings. Now, the Republican members emphasized that Christians were being targeted, and while the Democratic members did not deny that, they just wanted a situation where the U.S. government had a more appealing, a more broad approach, you know, to dealing with the killings. So whichever way you dice it, there is a clear indication that the American government, both the executive arm led by the president and the legislative arm, they are very keen to engage Nigeria to sort out what has become a very persistent problem regarding these killings that have been going on for a long time. And that was the impression that I left, you know, coming out of the room yesterday afternoon, you know, from the U.S. Congress. The American government, both the executive arm and the legislative arm, they really want to see how they can help Nigeria to end some of these very heinous killings.
Indeed. So I want to believe, I want to also think that the Nigerian government made a representation right there. But the people who were quite concerned, I heard criticism of President Bola Tinubu's government, whom they believe has not been doing enough to stem these killings, they don't think he's been sitting up enough. And they also think that the government has been too full of defense. It would seem trying to excuse the killings that have been happening in the country all along. What are your thoughts on the representations that the Nigerian government made, if any?
Okay, right. So, and this goes to, some of the things that, we have been stressing. For instance, the fact that our president and his foreign affairs ministers, they were comfortable with the fact that for over 2 years, we did not have a single ambassador anywhere in the world, and particularly now in the United States. So what that meant was that you couldn't even have a Nigerian official sitting in that congressional hearing. Okay, they had no ambassador. There was no Nigerian official, sitting in that hearing. I didn't know whether members of the Nigerian embassy in Washington, D.C. were there, but none was recognized. So that tells you the depth of the problem when the president and his foreign affairs ministers just basically subjugated and made a nonsense, a mincemeat of what an ambassadorial positioning ought to be. Now, having said that, at about the same time that the Congress was having this important hearing yesterday, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, the National Security Advisor, was also in town. As a matter of fact, he had met at least 2 congressmen, both of whom made the point of that meeting yesterday at the hearing, that Mr. Nnamdi Kanu is in town with the Attorney General and the Inspector General of Police, I think the Chief of Defense Staff, and quite a number of very important Nigerian officials, about 10 of them. So they have met the chairman of the subcommittee on Africa, who presided over that hearing yesterday, Congressman Chris Smith, and they have also met Congressman Riley Moore, who has also been very vocal. And both of them, during the hearing, they gave their impression of the meeting. And I also had a chat with Congressman Smith after the hearing to get more about his own insight about what the Nigerian government came to deliver. And both of them, and I think they said it even at the hearing, that they were not impressed with the idea of the Nigerian government trying to deny, the fact that Christians were being persecuted, that Christians were being killed. Now, they also concede what is also factual, that it's not only Christians, but they said that there was no point trying to deny the fact that Christians are particularly being targeted, especially, and they were very detailed about it, especially in Plateau and Benue and in southern Kaduna. And so they expressed that point. They also said, talking about their meetings with the rebuttal delegation, both of them, Congressman Smith and Congressman Riley Moore, they said that they challenged the Nigerian delegation to give them any kind of proof that some of these attackers, these terrorists, these bandits, these intruders, these violent extremists, that they should give any evidence about their prosecution. That not only are there no sufficient records about arrest, that there are no records of any kind of consequences being meted out to the perpetrators of this violence over a long period of time. So they made the point that was some of the things that they told the delegation, and that the delegation did not have, enough significant proof that indeed the federal government has been up and doing, especially in the area of prosecution. So the point is that yes, the Nigerian view is being had in town with the fact that you have Nnamdi Kanu, Attorney General, and some of them in town. But this was the exchange, and the representatives of the State Department, which is the executive arm of government, 2 of them were at the hearing. They also said that the Nnamdi Kanu delegation will be meeting with senior members of the U.S. State Department, in the coming days, possibly today, being Friday, but I'm sure that those meetings are going to be taking place between the Nnamdi Kanu delegation and the executive arm of the U.S. government. But they've already met at least 2 Congressmen Smith and Riley Moore.
Well, one of the testimonies that stood out for me was one of Dr. Oge Onobogo. I'm sure that you must have listened to her as well, who spoke very distinctly about understanding the issues. It would seem that her representation, really put at the forefront what the issues really are. For our viewers who might have missed that, perhaps we could quickly play that for us. You can give me your impression of that and tell us where it is that we should be going from here.
It's important to engage deeply and broadly with communities across Nigeria. The U.S. can play a constructive role, but it must avoid selective intervention and address the concerns of all Nigerians across all religions to prevent worsening sectarian divisions. 2, it's important to rethink reactive quick-win actions that may seem beneficial to Nigerians, but could have larger and far-reaching negative impacts. If the Trump administration proceeds with unilateral military action in Nigeria, it could endanger the Christians it aims to protect and worsens divisions along religious lines. Now, recommendations for the Nigerian government. It is important to appoint a Nigerian ambassador to the United States to improve its international engagement and manage narratives about its security realities. It's critical for President Tinubu to appoint a capable Nigerian ambassador to the US, as I also recommended in my testimony in March. Second, the Nigerian government needs to make accountability of both perpetrators and of the authorities central to the response. Nigerian citizens need justice, as criminality in the Middle Belt has increased due to impunity. The narrative of Christian genocide has gained traction because of years of mass killings without accountability, leaving many faith communities feeling abandoned. Third, Nigerian government needs to get serious about police reform. Nigeria's single federalized police force struggles to address the country's complex security challenges.
Well, some people will say that it's hard to fault those summaries, talking about selective intervention, rethinking unilateral military action on the part of the United States, and also for Nigeria, asking the Nigerian government to appoint a U.S. ambassador and also put accountability and justice for those who have suffered this violence for years. Is there anything you fault there, Mr. Konde?
Well, certainly not, except that, and I did raise this issue in my private chat with Congressman Smith, the chair of the Africa Subcommittee, to say that he didn't think that Mr. President was really interested in invading Nigeria. And it was very clear that, even though the rhetoric seemed to have been a bit extreme from the U.S. president, but clearly nobody is envisaging a serious invasion of Nigeria. What I think is on the table, and the members of the U.S. State Department at the hearing also made this point, is that we're going to see how they can cooperate with the Nigerian government. Because now that the designation of CPC has been done, country of particular concern, that policy framework also includes the setting up. And I think the State Department people said that yesterday, that a task force has now been set up that will bring together both the U.S. and the Nigerian governments to look at the tools that the American government have on offer to help Nigeria sort out this issue. So I don't have any worries about that invasion. I don't think that's going to happen. But part of the point that was being made in the room, which Ms. Oge also restated, was the fact that there is need for justice. When there is injustice, every other voice is drowned by injustice. And that seems to me to be the strongest propelling factor in what has happened, that you have a U.S. president saying that, look, I'm going to prioritize what is happening in Nigeria. We're going to try and raise our voices to end it. It's because the level of injustice.
Mr. Konde, we certainly will be digging deeper into this matter when you return. Hopefully, I know that, well, let's just say we'll dig deeper. No matter what happens, we certainly have to keep these issues on the front burner. We have to thank you so much for your time with us. Mr. Laolu Akonde is the former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources. We'll take a short break now. We'll be back shortly to discuss one more issue. Find out what it is when we come back from this break. Well, we'll welcome you back with some breaking news right now. With news just coming in saying that terrorists have now invaded a Catholic school in Niger State, abducting students and staff. The number of students abducted have been unconfirmed, but the name of the school is St. Mary's School, a Catholic institution in Papiri community in Agwara local government area of Niger State. Once again, we understand that some terrorists have invaded a Catholic school, St. Mary's School, a Catholic institution in Papiri community in Agwara local government area of Niger State. We certainly will be bringing you more details on that particular piece of information as we get them. But we're switching our gears now to a matter that is also very important. You know, even as our country goes through all of these challenges, there are sectors that still need rebuilding. I mean, culture that still needs to be preserved. And we're going into partnerships. I mean, we've heard the United States wanting to partner with Nigeria to, you know, end terrorism. The European Union is also very interested in keeping the partnership, cultural partnerships going. And this morning, we're speaking with Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, who is the cluster coordinator, Africa-Europe Partnerships for Culture, Nigeria cluster. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm sure that you can understand where we currently are as a country. These are no easy times. Nonetheless, we just have to, you know, talk about this matter. £20 million is no joke. Where precisely are we looking at investing that money, and how does it go to strengthen cultural partnerships?
Thank you so much. The Africa-Europe Partnership for Culture is a very interesting program that's divided into three components. So we have the Sub-Saharan component, the West African component, and the South African component. However, for Nigeria, we're under the West African component alongside 5 other West African countries: Burkina Faso, Ghana, Senegal, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire. Specifically for this West African component, our focus is on the festival sector, meaning we're focusing on capacity building, skill development, internationalization, and also talent management. So this is what the partnership is about, ensuring that colleagues of ours in the festival ecosystem are well knowledgeable, are well trained, are well skilled. They learn from our partners outside and inside Nigeria, European countries as well, on how to better develop the festival ecosystem in Nigeria.
Interesting, because we're just approaching December, and we heard the Minister for Culture talking about how the country is looking at investing and making sure that Dirty December, you know, is truly dirty this year. Does this have anything to do with the partnerships as well?
I mean, December, yes, festivity is also one of the major things happening in December. But during this period, we're going to do a lot of mapping, seeing what the industry is like in terms of the audience database. This is what we're going to work with in December, specifically, yes.
So what can Nigerian young people, because I believe that while you're looking at the mapping, you've spoken about capacity building. A lot of people will be thinking that this should have an effect on job creation. This should have an effect on unemployment, etc. What are some of the, let's say, impact that you're hoping to be able to make in this regard?
Yes, the festival ecosystem in Nigeria has very interesting job opportunities for young people in terms of the technical part of it, the administrative part of it, the volunteering part of it, the marketing part of it. It is endless. And because of this, we've decided to put together this, the structure, make it more organized, ensuring that each of these departments in the festival industry, they're well defined. We ensure that these people are well trained, they're well knowledgeable. And with this, once we have a good framework, most importantly for the festival ecosystem, yes, now we can have more job opportunities for young people who are passionate about pursuing a career in the festival industry. Yes.
Well, for those of us who are watching and who are very interested in what she's saying, we know that this is just an appetizer, and we know that we certainly will be bringing you back for a proper discussion, which will perhaps be our main course, perhaps sometime in December. We have to thank you so much, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, who is the Cluster Coordinator, Africa-Europe Partnerships for Culture, Nigeria Cluster. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and that's a promise that we will certainly bring you back, I'm sure, by the time the mapping has been done. Thank you for your patience. Well, just
thank you so much.
Also highlight once more this breaking news that we have is now Scrolling at the bottom there, we have a little more information. Terrorists are said to have abducted over 52 students from a Catholic school in Niger State. We understand the school is St. Mary's School, a Catholic institution in Papiri community in Agwara local government area of Niger State. Once again, 52 students are said to have been abducted from a Catholic school in Niger State. We certainly will be bringing you more details as we get them. But this is where we anchor Sunrise Daily this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Stay safe this weekend. I'm Maugbe Ogrimso.